I want to be the very best, like no one ever was. To catch them is my real test. To train them is my cause. I will travel across the land, searching far and wide, each Pokémon to understand the power that's inside Pokémon.
NBs, ladies, gentlemen, Pokemaniacs, and master trainers, welcome. Let's discuss Pokemon. Like a lot of people watching, I'm someone whose childhood was completely dominated by Pokemon, so much so that I have way too much to say about it. It's really hard for me to talk about it straightforwardly, and doing this is going to require a lot of dedicated focus. So today I'd specifically like to discuss the Pokemon franchise, fan ownership over art, and ROMs, and particularly my favourite Pokemon ROM, Pokemon Liquid Crystal. And of course I'll also be using the opportunity to push my communist agenda, just like Squirtle would have wanted. Pokemon Red version and Pokemon Green version, the original games in the Pokemon series, were released in 1996. Within a few years, it would be a worldwide phenomenon, with several chapters in the game series, a trading card game, an anime series released internationally, and a fucking movie franchise with annual releases.
Cute, cuddly characters who become supercharged so they can fight their enemies. But some experts say the entire Pokemon phenomenon is the enemy.
In my opinion, parents should not let their kids watch Pokemon, play Pokemon, buy Pokemon cards, have anything whatsoever to do with Pokemon, because the message is violence.
The success of the franchise almost completely comes down to its immediate popularity with children, and there are a few obvious reasons these games captured the imaginations of children so completely.
The greatest secret is kids get it and adults don't. So therefore, by ownership, when youngsters of 5, 6, 7 start talking their language, Pokemon language, initially parents do not understand it, and they take a little while to...
The child-aged player character gets to travel away from home like a big grown-up, they have cool animal friends, the designs are varied and consistently thoughtful, so kids get to argue constantly about which one is the best. One possibility we're going to ignore all others for today, though, is that Pokemon is so successful because it's a flawless masterpiece. Okay, no, that's silly. Success doesn't work like that. Media isn't a meritocracy. The fact that Pokemon is a masterpiece and its worldwide success is just a happy coincidence. There's a lot to be said about both the context of its creation and the context into which the franchise was published and how it was received, so this video is going to bring together Pokemon with another masterpiece first released in 1996. Me! That is to say, like a lot of people watching, for me Pokemon completely dominates my childhood, and it would be absolutely counterproductive to pretend otherwise. So, what is Pokemon about? Well, let's turn to the theme song again for clues. Oh, you're my best friend, in a world we must defend. Defend from what exactly? Well, isn't it obvious? Capitalism! Back on my bullshit again? Okay, mostly, but Pokemon was inspired originally by its creator's love of bug collecting as a child. Other kids called him Dr. Bug, and he aspired to be an entomologist before he eventually got into game design. And I think there's something really sweet about the way the franchise seems to understand that people are often upset and creeped out by bugs, but still sympathizes with bug catchers, and shows the way that insects can be really cool. Moreover, with Pokemon, Satoshi Tajiri wanted to inspire a love of nature and animals in children, and I think it's undeniably one of the most prominent themes of the entire franchise. You have Pokemon like Muck and Coughing that are polluted by toxic waste, Galarian Corsola representing the destruction of the barrier reef. The first movie is about a Pokemon uprising rebelling against humans for exploiting and enslaving them. Like, the resolution is that Ash's Pikachu serves as a model for how humans should respect animals and treat them as equals and partners instead of tools. They say this all explicitly. It's a children's film. It's not subtle. The climate crisis, and in particular the fact that the climate crisis is driven by human greed and exploitation, is a constantly foregrounded theme of the franchise. In Bulbasaur's mysterious garden, while musing on the scientific debate over whether Venusaur is a plant or an animal, Brock says, maybe Venusaur represents that we're all connected to nature.
Ira, to you and Pikachu, a hearty good evening.
And this is going to be one of the hottest selling toys for the holidays. This is a talking Pikachu from Hasbro Toys, not even in the stores yet. It's going to be in next month. But that psychiatrist who had that quote last, that how bad Pokemon is, I guarantee you these people haven't seen any of the cartoons at all. They have no concept. Get this episode today, Pokemon Friends, and it's about abused Pokemon that aren't treated well by their trainers. This is a great episode about abused characters that have to go to a special resort to get better and meet better kids to grow with.
Every scheme of every villain in Pokemon is about the exploitation of Pokemon labor and the destruction of the environment, from Team Rocket's cons and theft, to Gary's disrespect of his Pokemon friends, to the guy trying to sell you Slowpoke tails, to the man in the Pokemon Center who wants $500 for a Magikarp.
He's nothing but a flim-flam, man. He's been that ever since we met him at Farpoint. Flim-flam.
In fact, extinct Pokemon play a prominent role in every What are you doing? I'm doing my Snorlax game design take. No, you can't do that here. This video is about copyright. Extinct Pokemon play a prominent role in every generation right from the beginning because conservation and ecological protection is a vital concern of the text. I know I may well be getting ahead of myself for some people here. I asked all my friends who played Pokemon as children what Pokemon was about, and I did not hear these themes come up at all. Instead, everyone I asked told me Pokemon is about friendship, adventure, exploring, coming of age, friendship, and friendship. I have my own theory as to why this may be, but first let's talk about the ubiquity of Pokemon and some of the knock-on effects of that. Everyone who grew up with it feels an immense amount of ownership over Pokemon because at a certain level of ubiquity, art just feels like it belongs to the public. As John Berger says in Ways of Seeing,
this is vividly illustrated by what happens when a painting is shown on a television screen. The painting enters each viewer's house. There it is surrounded by their wallpaper, their furniture, their mementos. It enters the atmosphere of their family. It becomes their talking point. It lends its meaning to their meaning. At the same time, it enters a million other houses, and in each of them is seen in a different context. Because of the camera, the painting now travels to the spectator rather than the spectator to the painting. In its travels, its meaning is diversified. One might argue that all reproductions more or less distort, and that therefore, the original painting is still in a sense unique.
Pokemon Liquid Crystal is a ROM that was in development since 2007 until... It's really hot under these lights. I gotta get this woolly jumper off. No, we're going Pinafore dress now. Oh jeez, Snorlax can wear my jumper. Pokemon Liquid Crystal is a Pokemon ROM in development from 2007 until... well, the last update was in 2016. There are lots of people credited with contributing to the ROM, but the two main creators are called Link and Zelda and Zaiku. And here, I'd like to talk about my experiences with it. First though, ROMs. A ROM is the colloquial term for a port of a console game, usually Game Boy specifically. The name ROM comes from the read-only memory chip in a game cartridge that the data needs to be copied from to create a port of the game. Who is it that copies the data, you may be asking? And the answer is fans of the game. Someone who wants to play the game from their childhood but doesn't have access to their console anymore, or maybe someone who wants to mod their nostalgic fave in some way. For example, most ROM emulators include fast-forward settings, which are honestly absurdly useful because do you know how slow Pokemon is? Walking from Viridian City to the Elite Four, I can feel my fingernails growing. Artists need to get paid, just like everyone else, but when art is considered culturally essential, efforts are made to make that art freely available to everyone. Like, you can just look at the Mona Lisa by Googling it. It's not the fully same experience as going to the Louvre and shoving your way through an enormous crowd of tourists and then later reflecting in your hotel room whether anyone will ever have an authentic experience seeing the painting the way Leonardo da Vinci ever intended ever again, but as Berger points out, everyone's experience of a painting is different anyway. The Mona Lisa is considered so seminal that everyone needs to know what it looks like, because how are we going to have conversations about art if we don't know what the Mona Lisa looks like? If Mr. Art Enjoyer, that's the man who owns every painting in Europe, said that only the people he let see the painting could see it, wouldn't we lose something as a society? As a species? I don't know, it's just a picture of some lady. What if they wouldn't let you play video games, though? Imagine that, fuck! Clearly, there's some kind of assumption that ubiquitous art belongs to everyone. Console games, especially, which have a huge financial barrier to entry, have repeatedly become culturally ubiquitous points of reference. But how are my filthy ratmen comrades and I supposed to experience Muscular Murder Man XL only on Nintendo DS if we can't afford the Nintendo DS? Wait. Get it? It's because of communism? The answer ROMs provide is that old games are just free to everyone. Old games, by the way, that are largely discontinued and don't make any new money for the people who make them. Lots of art debuts in a setting that costs money to access, but then, if the work is considered essential, effort is made to make it available to everyone. The difference with video games, the absolutely magical thing, is all it takes is one person. If just one person loves a game enough, they can make a ROM of it, and it'll be saved forever. Also, a lot of ROM hacking is done to translate games to make them available and accessible to a wider audience, or to change them back to earlier versions to push back on censorship laws. It's a gaming paradise of liberty and high-minded public ownership of art. Except that most anti-censorship changes in ROM games were to add back in naked women or Nazi imagery, so make of that what you will.
Who's that Pokémon?
Matrix on video cassette and DVD. Free your mind. It's the movie critics call a virtual masterpiece. What you couldn't believe at the movies now comes home. Buy or rent it today.
A new pool table, air hockey, or foosball table delivered in time for Christmas tree, but only at
Leisure Time Warehouse.
It's my communist agenda. Maybe if they love the game enough, they'll want to not just copy it, but update it in some way. Try and improve on it, give it modern graphics and more content. So we come back around to Pokémon Liquid Crystal. Pokémon Liquid Crystal isn't just a copy of the game. Instead, it uses the more modern graphics of Pokémon Fire Red and the setting of Pokémon Crystal. Pokémon Soul Silver and Pokémon Heart Gold came out a couple of years after Liquid Crystal, but they're really distinct games. For one thing, Liquid Crystal includes some elements from much later generations of Pokémon that the developers liked, and those elements are the ones that crash all the fucking time. It also includes small quality of life things, like letting you skip a tutorial you've done literally 10,000 times. Or now, Haunter can evolve into Gengar with a Moonstone, because in ROMs you can't trade with other players. That's just neat. Liquid Crystal gave Pokemon fans an updated Johto Kanto game with full color graphics, and it did it years before Nintendo made an official game doing that. And that's really cool. For many people, Pokemon Liquid Crystal is the perfect Pokemon experience. For fans who are feeling nostalgic and don't want to play any of the newer, inferior games, you start in Johto, confront the Pokemon Thief, heal the sick Ampharos, squirt all over the Sudowoodo, all that good stuff. And then you get to go to first gen Kanto. There's such a personal touch to this ROM. There's really obvious things, like when you have to battle Link and Zelda, and Zyku, and then there are subtler things you could easily miss, like where Laz seems to have put one of his teachers in the game, which is really cute, although I'm not super sure why his battle text is, "You're in denial? How dare you!" I love the changes that have been made to the base game that clearly come from someone who played the old games and loved them. Like switching off Lieutenant Surge's traps, because seriously, who has the time? Probably would have appreciated that more if it wasn't right before an exhausting teleport pad puzzle base, which they added in. But hey ho. There's a slowly emerging B-plot to the game, which begins as just a confusing amount of rivals who all seem to serve the same narrative function of popping up to battle you every 3 towns or so. Oh my god, is this another one? How many battle boys does this game need? Oh wait, no, he's helping me. He's healing my Pokemon. Okay. So Axel is basically the same as Lance, who's a good trainer who's on my side. Wait, why is Russell fighting me for helping Axel? Why doesn't he fight Axel? So there's Russell and Zane and they're all team leaders and criminals and bad guys, and then there's Axel and Lance and they're basically just the same dude. But eventually it really comes into its own. For the most part, it's just recycling assets and whole locations and bringing in ideas from later generations rather than fully making it its own thing, like Team Saturn are a big part of this plotline. Basically, one of your identical red-haired rivals, Axel, turns out to be working for Interpol, hunting down Team Rocket, and another one of your identical red-haired rivals, the Pokémon thief, ends up becoming Team Rocket's leader, and you have to go with Axel to stop him. All of this intertwined with the base game plot where you fight Red, the champion and protagonist of the first game, and they've added in these mysterious old men, Mr. R, Mr. G, and Mr. H, who are up to something, and you're not quite sure what, but they want to battle Red as well, and when you talk to them, they give you this really subtle hint, we're waiting for Red, maybe you should go fight the Elite Four again. Cool, thanks, fine. Fucking Elite Four. Let me teach you about the immortal science of dialectical communism! Alright, done. I've beaten them again, I can fight the boy now. Wait, what the fuck? Okay, fuck it. Oh, the game rolling its credits turned my Blossom into Bad Egg? What the fuck? This is... I named my Blossom after myself because of Gloom turning into a femme plant girl, and now it turned her into a Bad Egg? What the fuck? I feel so attacked. Fine, I'll just have to use my Venusaur for this bit. The B-plot becomes really janky and confusing past this point, with the Pokemon thief who is now Team Rocket's leader starts to get referred to as Red, and Giovanni shows up and claims to be his father, which would track with a fan theory about Giovanni being the player's father from the first game. So is he meant to be the same Red as that Red? I don't know. They didn't use the same sprite. I can't tell. It talks like he got twisted and turned evil after having originally been good, but as far as I can tell, these are just two different boys. Basically, the B-plot is really fun, and I want to say despite the jank right now, but honestly that's not even fair, because I love the jank. It's that very video games experience where the jankier something gets sometimes, the funnier and more charming it becomes. Like, when you beat Link and Zelda, he goes off in a huff saying, I'll go work on another hack now instead. And honestly, that joke gets funnier for every awful glitch you encounter. Also, there's this whole conversation about McDonald's where the characters are performing a, 2000s era meme about apple pie, and it's the deepest level of open a hole in the ground and swallow me up cringe, but it's also very endearing. There's a silly mixture of funny glitches and bad dialogue, and the game trying to take itself way too seriously. Like, Zane says he was in prison for murder? What? Nobody wants this in a Pokemon game, are you kidding me? Or in the late game bits, it's very clear the programmer never quite made the game factor in your character choices at the start, so if you picked girl, every single character just misgenders you everywhere you go. That's it, I'm going to Twitter with this shit. Even besides any of the changes, one of the most fundamental things about Liquid Crystal was simply the fact of it being free and accessible. And as I've been saying, the ubiquity. It's not that it does something so radically different, but it does tap into what's great about Pokémon. Oh, you better believe it's pretentious art theory tangent time! The Lion Man statuette is one of the oldest pieces of art we have, especially art depicting something imaginary, a human being with the head of a lion. It's a fundamentally fascinating object. First off, and this is just for starters, it was carved from a mammoth tusk? Like, how fucking cool is that? Then there's the gender. Look at all the gender going on here. This lion has no mane, so actually, is it a lion man, or is it a lion woman? Is it a man's body with a lioness head? Maybe more interestingly, is it a purely human body with a purely lion head, transcending notions of sex and gender? These are all hotly contested possibilities in archaeology. Then there's the meaning of the piece itself, some kind of fusion of person and animal, maybe trying to represent some way in which we, no matter who we are, or what gender, or human or animal, are all part of the same thing. Or, equally possible, it was made by 40,000-year-old furries. Basically, Pokemon is really cool because animals are really cool. And I think Pokemon and the Lion Man and plenty of other human art across the centuries and across the world speak to something viscerally true in the human experience. And in a different time to ours, where the notion of ownership over art is a lot more social, maybe the art that simply captures people's imaginations the most can be the thing we share the most, instead of the art that's the most profitable. I think that's something really wonderful about ROMs. On the internet, everything is, in a sense, just ideas, just art. It's human expression in a realm made purely of human expression. That's why early internet culture had such a huge focus on these high-minded, libertarian ideas like, don't take the boobies out of my video games. As the internet came to be seen as more potentially profitable for capitalists, the issue of regulation and law became more pressing. And this is why copyright law has become such a fucking big deal online. Have you noticed how much copyright law is used online instead of laws more appropriate to the actual issue? I've seen people use copyright strikes to silence their political opponents or their critics instead of harassment or libel laws, because the copyright system for a copyright holder is way more reliable and infinitely more on their side. This is because copyright is landlordism over intellectual property, and landlordism is the basis of capitalism. Mr. Art Enjoyer simply says, no, I own the Mona Lisa, and you're going to have to pay me if you want to enjoy it. So my point isn't that the art that is most profitable is in some way inherently bad, but rather that art is only allowed ubiquity if the supposed owner can make enough money off it being shared, and that fucking sucks turds! Like, Wikipedia, for example, doesn't use ads, and it's a resource used by everybody and made for everybody, but it still has at least server hosting fees to pay to its digital landlord, so it has to go begging for change. You should pay Wikipedia. Shout out to Wikipedia! When I first moved away from home to university, I took my old Game Boy with me, and I used it to play and replay Pokémon a bunch. Like so many people, Pokémon is the definitive game of my childhood. The first 2 generations and a few of the 3rd gen Pokémon hold this incredibly nostalgic power for me, and it took me absolutely forever to get past that and not think newer Pokémon are just garbage. I mean, some of them are, but some of them are really good. Look at Wooloo! Look at her and tell her you think she's bad. You can't do it! But at this time when I just moved away, this distinction of the older generations and Pokemon before, I don't know, Pig Knight came along and ruined everything, it kind of mattered to me a lot. And when I downloaded an emulator on my phone so I could play Pokemon more conveniently, I found the perfect game that had all my exactly favourite bits of Pokemon, and a fast forward button, so naturally it became my go-to procrastination. I played it for hours upon hours upon hours, and if I'm being realistic here, it's because it was a little bit too comforting. I guess growing up I wasn't the happiest kid, and it was very exciting to me, this story about traveling all around the country and all around the world and making loads of friends and meeting these magical animals. Actually, it wasn't just exciting, it was completely enthralling to me. It was everything. And I think a big part of that was, like Professor Oak says, your adventure is about to begin. And I would think maybe that's why I'm not a super happy kid, is because my adventure just hasn't begun yet. And I really internalized it as a very real human story, and when I moved away, it felt a lot like a big adventure is beginning, finally, but that's not really what life is like. You don't go camping in the woods with friends and meet magical animals and learn and grow together. Instead, you have to pay rent, and there's like a lot of deadlines all of a sudden. And I guess after all this time, I'm really happy with who I am, and I'm really ready for my adventure to begin. And we're all stuck indoors and can't go anywhere. And maybe that's why I've been thinking about Pokemon so much recently. Anyway, if I was a gym leader, I think I'd be a ghost gym leader, because if I had to pick from just one type, ghosts are all the coolest Pokemon. But if I was just a regular trainer out in the world, I'd probably end up having loads of normal type Pokemon, because I'm a massive sucker for big round Pokemon shaped like Friend. I was very homesick, and I was usually putting off important work I had to do. Actually, several times I had to fully uninstall it just to radically sever myself so I could sit down and finally spend all night reading Wikipedia summaries of what famous philosophers thought instead of doing my engineering coursework. Shout out to Wikipedia. I think I vibed really hard with Pokemon Liquid Crystal around this time in the same way a lot of other people did, because although the game was, on some level, a statement that only the earlier Pokemon were good and worthwhile, and a lot of people playing fell on that side of the divide as well, at the same time, it was so clearly driven by a very personal longing for Pokemon to never end. It takes a base game that lets you travel through 2 whole regions already and adds more and more and more on top of it. I played so much of it because there was so much to play, even though I never got to the end because I had to cut myself off like that. And describing it now, it feels pretty clear that it's because it speaks to a desire for things to both never end and never change. Do you ever have this with old anime where no matter what the intended audience is, it feels a little bit like you're watching someone else's childhood? Like that scene in Ghost in the Shell in the van where Kusanagi is talking to Togusa, and Kusanagi's voice actor delivers the lines really flatly, like almost like she doesn't understand the words she's saying, and it really adds to it. Like, Kusanagi's almost completely machine, so it feels like this robotic form of speech, and what could be bad voice acting feels like it's really giving depth and more eeriness to the character. And I'm watching all this and having these thoughts, and I really want to share them with people, but the movie's like 25 years old, and I feel like maybe people already had all these thoughts and this will be really boring. Maybe that's just me. Sometime later, when I was in a significantly better place, I reinstalled Liquid Crystal just to play for fun. With all my stopping and starting before, I had never actually gotten past the end of Kanto and gone to the Orange Islands. For the first time in maybe a decade, I was gonna go try out a new story set in the best era of Pokemon. So I beat Johto, and I beat Kanto, and I played Link and Zelda's B-plot through again, but this time all the way to the end, where it takes you to a whole new region, the Orange Islands, based off the anime, and I got a little way into the Orange Islands before I found out that it wasn't actually done. All this time, I'd been playing a ROM that had been more or less abandoned by the developers, and I could play only as far as the half-completed maps the developers left behind, and no further. At first, honestly, this was a little heartbreaking. Then it felt ironic. Something I'd been using to not get things done had never been finished itself. I kept putting off finishing it because if it was done, I'd have to get on with the rest of my life. But now seeing where it ended but didn't finish, it felt like a cruel joke. This game I was kind of unhealthily using to stop me progressing was not only never finished, but it was now literally stopping me progressing. I found you can play right up to the pixel where childhood ends. If I could take one more step, I would be the furthest from home I'd ever been, but now I'd never be able to. But then it struck me that I shouldn't be sad it hadn't been finished. As corny as it sounds, I realized I should be happy that Link and Zelda and Zaiku and the others had loved Pokemon so much in the first place, they'd made this game. I shouldn't feel like this was the farthest point from home, because, as Berger points out, when art enters the home, it enters the viewer's context, but at the same time, when art is ubiquitous enough, it becomes its own context, and that is how we take home with us everywhere we go. If art can be free and shared between everybody, we can all love it, and we can be richer as a society in a very meaningful sense. I said before, I had a theory as to why nobody brings up environmentalism and exploitation, the environmentalist socialist politics of Pokemon. And honestly, I think it's because those ideas became background noise to the generation raised on it. It's actually too obvious to point out, because respecting animals and protecting our vast and diverse ecosystem is just so obviously important. Maybe it's because Pokemon taps into something viscerally true about the human experience, or maybe Pokemon just made us all think that and brainwashed an entire generation. I don't know, maybe it's a bit of both. I know Pokemon belongs to everyone. Pokemon Liquid Crystal isn't great because it made big leaps forward or produced a revolutionary new Pokemon game. I mean, as soon as they tried to do that, they all literally just quit and gave up. To me, it's that they made little incremental changes to Pokemon Crystal and made a version of it that was exactly where I needed it to be, exactly when I needed it. To me, the magic is in the simple act of appreciation, and in that, an act of reclamation. It says, "This is ours." First off, I'd like to thank Molly Noise, who does the incredible music for my channel, including the track you're hearing right now. Isn't it great? I'd also like to thank my patrons who make all of this possible, and you, the viewer, for watching all the way to the end. If you'd like to become a patron and support the channel, get early access to my videos, bonus content, and a bunch of other stuff, check out patreon.com/CurioVids. I recently put up a shirt on Bonfire with the channel icon that was done by my friend who also did the Patreon art, so check that out too if you're interested, link below. I stream a lot of the games that I end up talking about over on Twitch at twitch.tv/TheyMaSophie, and I tweet powerful and highly intellectual tweets on Twitter at TheyMaSophie too. I'm starting a new series with a friend about inclusive tabletop gaming called Rolling with Rainbows, and you can find a link to that you know where. This script was originally written like 2 whole years ago at this point now, actually. I shelved it for a really long time, and then I came back to it when lockdown started, and I decided I'd make it into its own proper thing, and I really like what it's turned into in the end. I am going to do another video eventually talking about Pokemon and ROMs from a game design perspective, because there's a lot of stuff that I think that Pokemon, especially later versions, have actually like adopted from fan versions of the games, and I think that's super interesting. First though, I've got to start working on my Cyberpunk 2077 video, which is gonna be a big one. Okay everybody, bye for now.